And welcome to this week's episode of the Soapbox with Hugh Bushell and Cher McCoy. Say hi, Cher.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Our very special guest this week is former state delegate Rich Anderson, who is running this spring to serve as chair of the Republican Party of Virginia. The Republicans are slated, as I understand, to elect a party chairman for a 4-year term at the party's convention, an unassembled convention, which we'll ask you about here in a few minutes on August 15th. But before we do that, let me just throw out a little bio about the young man sitting before us. And Rich Anderson is a native Virginian who retired from, it says here, from the Pentagon. Since you actually probably retired from the Air Force while working at the Pentagon, I'm assuming. Okay. We'll skip over that. In 2009, as a highly decorated 30-year Air Force colonel. I'll probably call you colonel. I'm a retired military myself. So during his military career, he accumulated senior executive level leadership experience at leading complex organizations. Yes, that's a fact. Consisting of thousands of people. For the last 12 years, he has worked tirelessly as a local grassroots activist and leader in the Prince William County Republican Committee to elect Republicans to federal, state, local office. From 2010 to 2018, he represented the 51st House District in the Virginia General Assembly. He's a graduate of Virginia Tech, has been happily married for 34 years to Ruth Anderson, who's pretty accomplished herself, a retired 21-year Air Force veteran, local grassroots Republican activist, and former member of the Prince William County Board of Supervisors. They are the parents of 3 children, perhaps their greatest accomplishment, and have 7 grandchildren, and have lived in Woodbridge for 20 years. Welcome, Colonel. How are you doing today?
Doing just fine. Thanks for having me on today.
Oh, you know what? Let me throw out the quote. I should have him read it. This is his quote. "We will have but one goal, the sure election of Republican candidates and the swift defeat of Democratic candidates." Is that not a military goal or what?
Well, it's a pretty concise mission statement. And why else would there be a state party headquarters?
Oh, I loved it. I loved it. So tell us, what have you been doing during the coronavirus? Are you at home right now?
I'm at home. I'm down in my basement office where we've been running our campaign since January of this year. And so during the coronavirus, during the early parts of it, we were pretty much at home. We would go to the store. We would wear a mask, and those sorts of things. But slowly things have opened back up. Unless you're down in Hampton Roads, I think the governor's clamped it back down on those people.
Oh.
Up here, we are still doing what we're doing.
Yeah, we need the economy working again. That's in the long run, that's going to hurt us a whole lot. So anyway, let's before Cher's got a ton of questions for you, and she knows all about this stuff, and I don't. But I got one question real quick. August 15th, what is an unassembled convention?
It is a creature that results from the COVID-19 coronavirus situation. Typically, political parties get together in a carnival environment that they call a convention. Usually, it can be anywhere from 3,000 to as many as 10,000 people. It's a time of celebration, competition, supporting your guy, opposing the other guy, and it's part family reunion. But because of the restrictions and the coronavirus situation, both political parties have had to do alternative methods. The other party is doing a virtual thing or has already done a virtual convention all online. For the Republican Party of Virginia, unassembled means everybody's not in one place. And so what will happen is on August the 15th, during the polling hours of 9 in the morning to 3 in the afternoon, there will be Republican delegates to the convention, not delegates in the sense of the General Assembly, but delegates to the convention that will drive up in their automobiles, cast their vote, and then from their car, and then depart. And then from there, the votes will be tallied at those 11 locations, and then ultimately a chairman announced, and there are 3 candidates for chairman.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense to me. That's a good way to work that. Cher, what do you think?
Yes, and that was exactly what we did at the 6th District one in Lynchburg on the 11th of this month, and it went very smoothly. We had buses that went as well as those that drove up in cars. And everybody I've talked to got in and out within 15 minutes or 20 minutes.
Good. What was your first question, Chair?
My first question is, there are three candidates running, the incumbent, Jack Wilson, you, and I'm really not sure how to pronounce Mike's last name. I've not heard it enough times. You can help me with that, Rich, how he says his name.
I know I've been running, alongside him for quite some time now because it's pronounced Shoalware.
Shoalware.
Shoalware. Okay, well, there's the three of you running for chair, and it has been the general consensus around the state with those that I've been in contact with that the majority seem to want Jack on. So it looks like it's, based on the information that I've had in my resources, it looks like it's between you and mine.
Mm-hmm.
So my question basically is, what role is the of the RPB chair? I think a lot of people don't always know because there's been some conflict or some controversy over when a RPB chair has gotten involved in a district that should have been handled by the district, or it is RPB's job to get involved in this particular issue, or so there's a little bit of confusion, and I don't think it's ever really mentioned all that often for people that really aren't heavy duty into politics, knows what really the role of a chair other than the usual duties of a chair of any committee. And the other question in conjunction with that is, why should a delegate vote for you over Mike?
Okay. Well, I moved up a little closer and I'll talk a little louder. For part one of your question, Chair, the chairman of the Republican Party of Virginia has to lead. And that's the reason I'm running. I just think that we have gotten marginally effective leadership. You can see that in the outcome of the election processes. In 2017, there was a significant loss in the House of Delegates. And then in 2019, the House flipped to the other party, as did the Senate. In 2017 also, the governor's mansion remained in the hands of a Democrat. And so right now, the party is on the ropes. It's been largely ineffective at the headquarters level. I tell you, it's dynamic and it's doing great things out in the field at our 126 local units across the Commonwealth. Those are the people that really do the hard lifting of electing candidates. But back at the headquarters, the chairman has to, first of all, lead the state party. He has to be their voice to the media, both the mainstream media and also social media. He has to chair periodic meetings of the State Central Committee, which is the governing body of the party. It consists of roughly 80 people. They're the policymaking body of the Republican Party of Virginia. He has to preside over the quadrennial, meaning every 4 years, meeting of the Virginia Party Convention, which, of course, we have coming up on the 15th of August. The difference is it's an unassembled as opposed to the traditional assembled convention. He or she, we've had women chairmen also. He or she has to sometimes preside over appeals from lower units when there is a difference of opinion or a complaint or things like that. But in the bottom line, and the Republican Party of Virginia chairman has to spend considerable amounts of time in fundraising. And I think that that's significantly where our party has fallen short. Both parties receive monies from their respective national headquarters. For us, the Republican National Committee, we also receive transfers, funds, grants, if you will, from the the House Republican Campaign Committee in Washington and the Senate Republican Campaign Committee and other sources. But that's not enough to operate on. While that money is helpful and provides the bulk right now of our operating revenues, chairman's got to get out there and raise money. And so I'm prepared, if elected, to get on an airplane and go anywhere in the country and sit across the desk from the appropriate people to husband the resources that we need. So that's largely the role of the chairman. And then I guess your second question is, why do I believe that I am the qualified guy among the three. First of all, I think that the incumbent, who is actually unappreciative that he stepped forward 2 years ago to complete the term of his predecessor, who departed early to run for public office himself. But we just have not gotten our sea legs, if you will, from an Air Force guy that's coming, but we haven't gotten our sea legs in order to win. And I know that we have the voters there behind their doors who can convey Republican candidates to victories all across the state of Virginia. So in my own view, I think there was really 4 reasons that I think I've kind of prepared to do this. Number one is I know all the corners of Virginia and the center, namely the Richmond area, very well. Born and raised in Roanoke, went to college at Virginia Tech. Then during my third year Air Force career, I spent 15 years in Virginia soil. First, I spent half a dozen years in the Rhodes area, the United States Atlantic Command. And then I spent 8 years at the Pentagon before I retired, and then have been here 12 years since my retirement. So, and then when I went into the House of Delegates, I really learned the central area of Virginia in and around Richmond. So I know these areas, the population, and so I just think that's very important. The second reason is the Air Force. I'm accustomed to leading pretty large and complex organizations. I'm nobody special. That's just the nature of military duty if you are privileged to move into the senior ranks. And so I believe that skill set will readily transition or transfer to a state party organization. It consists of 126 units spread across the state. Actually, it feels kind of like a military operation. I mean, we do campaigns, we have headquarters, we do field operations, and so it has a very familiar feel. The third thing is I've worked for 12 years at the grassroots level in the Prince William County Republican Committee, one of the largest committees in the state, and also in one of the most difficult areas of the state for Republican candidates. And so I know the process of knocking on doors. I typically would knock on 10,000 doors over an 8-month period every 100 years running for re-election. And so I understand that process. I don't hold a second fiddle to anybody else in terms of knowing grassroots operations. I've got my hands dirty doing that for a dozen years. And then lastly, having served in the House of Delegates, I do understand the political and electoral process in the state, how to put together successful campaigns, how to maneuver on the political battlefield in the toughest area of the state. And right now, my calling is to help others maneuver on their battlefield in those various parts of the state that I know pretty well, because in my view, it's time to fight and win again. And in order to win, you got to go through the fight. So,
of course, one of the things that no matter how much of the state we have, it's not going to do us any good unless we can get out the vote, which I'm sure is a big issue there. But I was also wondering, there are, especially with all the controversy and everything going on, there's probably a lot of independent voters out there. I don't know if they can make a difference, but what are your plans to reach those folks? I know, you've laid out some great ideas for reaching the Republicans. How do we reach the independent folks?
Well, it's absolutely crucial that we appeal to those independent voters out there who are essentially swing voters who can go either way. They can vote between election cycles for one party or the other. The party that is able to reach their innermost desires on those things that are principally the so-called kitchen table issues, transportation, education, healthcare, the economy, economic development, job creation and protection, all those kinds of things that are quality of life issues. And so it's vital that we do that. I think that we have a significant opportunity to appeal to the middle ground in the immediate and far distant future, simply because we saw in 2018 some very severe and what I would call extremist policies that have been embraced by the other party. And then we saw it in 2019 and 2020 in the legislative session of the General Assembly. And those things, many of them made their way to the governor's desk and he signed them into law. In politics, there's an old saying that for every action, there is an opposite and equal reaction, just like there is in the physical world. And we quite often see a pendulum swing back when you see a party move too far in the eyes of really the independent voters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's absolutely crucial we reach those people on those issues that affect their families, their jobs, and their quality of life. And I mean to lead this Republican Party of Virginia in a way that does, and I also mean to do it in a way, in a partnership with our legislative caucuses in both the Virginia House and the Virginia Senate, so that we have policy outcomes that appeal not only to members of our own party, but to that middle ground. It's absolutely crucial.
Education's my passion, so I'm all in favor of doing education, and that's one of the things that we try to improve in the 6th District is doing more training for getting out the vote and role playing so that people can learn to be comfortable to do doors and when they're doing at different events where they're manning a station and somebody leaves them alone and they don't feel they're comfortable to answer that question. As a unit chair, I was very cognizant of that, and I never left a volunteer alone that didn't have backup of me to help them out. It's all, all part of the education, and it's so important. So my next, I just want to make that comment, but my next question is, there's been a lot of discussion about the role in the voting of the Virginia Federation of Republican Women, the College Republicans, and the Young Republicans. I don't think that anybody would dispute their value. And certainly not, I know with the Federation, one thing that when Trump won, one of the people that he definitely congratulated was the Carrie Almond, and who was president at the time of the National Federation of Republican Women, and saying he couldn't have won without us. That was a nice thing for him to say, but I do believe that the women do help a lot. I don't think it's a question of the value of them. I think it's a question of how they got on the committee of the state central, because it was voted on by their own organizations. So it's a question of whether I think the dispute seems to be whether they should not be there and contribute, but whether they should be voting. And that is one of the questions that I'm being asked.
Well, there is an organization that formed sometime late last year here in Virginia that calls itself the Republican Change Committee, the RCC for short. And now that we have approached the RPD state convention date, they have been rather energetic in emailing the delegates to the state convention about their proposals that have been wrapped up in an amendment, proposed amendment to the state party plan. And the state party plan, for your viewers, is simply it amounts to the bylaws of the Republican Party of Virginia. I don't know why we call it the state party plan, but that's what we call it. And so the proposal incorporates the proposed amendment incorporates a number of things, the most contentious of which is this proposal to reduce by one the number of seats that the VFRW, the Virginia Federation of Republican Women, have on the state central committee. And then the same for the Virginia College Republican Federation, and the same for the Virginia Young Republican Federation, in reducing each of those by one seat, which would take them down from 3 seats to 2. And then there are also a number of other things in this proposed amendment that are supposed to streamline the operation of the state central committee and reorganize the way who they're accountable to and so forth. There are a few things in that plan that I think merit discussion, but the one thing that I cannot support is this proposal to reduce by 1 the seats held by the women and our 2 youth groups. If we do that, I think that will have a terrible chilling effect on those important groups that are so important to our operations. I know during every year I ran for the House of Delegates, they showed up. They deployed to Prince William. join their council. And while the authors of the proposal have structured this in a way where they say they've reduced the seats for several constituent groups, it's all by the same percentage. Whether that's true or not, I'm concerned that what we do is we send the wrong message, and we embrace a terrible optic by reducing the number of women and young Republican groups in our party's governing body. So therefore, I'm concerned about that. I can't vote for that. I think it will have a difficult time passing because, number one, it requires 75% of the convention delegates to approve it. That's number one. Number two, because we're doing a drive-through unassembled convention, there is no opportunity to debate it and offer amendments to the proposed changes. And I just think that that will have a chilling effect on it being able to pass. But perhaps later within the state central committee, some of those provisions we can consider. But again, whether it's at the state convention or later in the state central committee, I would not support a reduction of women and youth on our committee. Politics is about addition, I know. I've been there.
Well, I know that they're all very helpful. Certainly, I haven't worked much with the young Republicans, but I certainly have with the college Republicans, being in a college town. And I mentor a WNL student every year and have for the last 10 years. And where would they go in politics if they didn't have a mentor while they were in school? And instrumenting new programs for them and new incentives for internships that hasn't been done. Trying to increase the incentive by having a little bit more into an internship for them. And I know with WNL, you don't just give them beer and pizza. They want to network. They want to meet people. And that's what I've done with the ones that I've mentored.
Here, I believe very strongly that those two groups are women Republicans and our young Republicans, and our college Republicans. You need to have substantive positions of leadership and responsibility in our party. They're just, in my view, they're not auxiliary groups. They are mainstream members of our organization. We need to accept the very value-added things that they offer us, and they also need to have the opportunity to lead.
Yep, agree with that 100%. I think that especially as we move into new technology, they like and use that technology, and I think that the more young, especially, we have in the Republican Party, the better off we are. We've got. I shouldn't say. Yes, we need the women too. I didn't mean to leave them out. It just, but I work with youth so much, and so I think about that quite a bit.
Yeah, right. I get that.
Okay, sorry. So anyway, let's see. As you know, this is the Soapbox. And since we've got the sound actually working right at this moment, what I'd like to do is give you a couple minutes here at the end to spend your 2 or 3 minutes saying whatever it is that you'd like to say. And we'll kind of end on that, okay? Are you prepared for this, or are we catching you by surprise?
I even have a stopwatch.
I think I did prepare him.
To be respectful,
I gave him to him.
he told me that I would be able to speak for a couple of minutes. So I'm actually going to wing it. I've been so busy, I haven't had really time to think about this, but I know what I want to do at the party, so I can speak off the cuff.
Okay, your 3 minutes starts as soon as you start speaking. Go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Cher and I had a very chance meeting on the bus that I went on to greet people along with Congressman Ben Klein at the 6th District Convention in Lynchburg a few weeks ago. And it was just a fortuitous meeting, and it's led to this. I think that the Republican Party of Virginia, after a very difficult period over the last decade, is now at an inflection point. It is at a crossroads, as is our Commonwealth. And in the 401st year of being on Virginia soil. And I think it's absolutely crucial that we have a vital and engaged Republican Party of Virginia. The party has not had strong leadership from the headquarters level. The units have largely been on their own. but have been ably assisted by our congressional district Republican committees. But I just think there has been a vacuum of leadership at the top level. What I wish to do is turn that around, have a viable, vibrant, engaged, knowledgeable, and war-fighting party that once again wins elections. You know, that's absolutely crucial to the democratic process in this constitutional republic that we reside in, that we have in a two-party system, two vital and engaged parties. Right now, one is not. And I mean to spend every degree of mind and spirit that I have to ensure that it once again does that, wins elections, offers candidate options to the voters, as well as policy options through the legislative and executive branch processes. What I want to do is see the party work hard, close the gap in fundraising. I talked about that earlier, so I won't go through that again. But we have to identify and register new Republican voters and then get them to the polls. We've got to earn the trust of our 126 local Republican units all across the state. We have got to form coalitions of effective conservative and Republican groups that wish to march together on the battlefield, because that's what produces political synergy and wins elections. And so with that, the 15th of August is a very important date in the life of our party. And beyond that, starting on the 16th, I intend to move this party ahead. Won't do it myself. There's going to have to be legions of soldiers with me to help, because truly it's time to fight and win again.
Well, that's kind of it for this week's edition of the Soapbox. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And next week, we'll be speaking with Lucas Morale. And meanwhile, stay safe, stay happy, keep fighting the good fight, and hopefully you'll be able to join us next time.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you. Bye.